Hi, I am the Lady Miss Vagina Jenkins, and it is time for queer astrology. Also, I'm hotter than hell. Like, climate change is real. The world's on fire, and I am sweating. Whew. If I don't turn into a pool of sweat, I'd like to talk about house systems in astrology today, thanks to a question in the comments from KetchupKnife. Shout out to them. Tip of the hat. So for folks that might not be aware, house systems in astrology are like the theoretical underpinning that helps us interpret different charts. There are more than a dozen house systems in astrology. Some of them are based on time, some of them are based on like space, location, our location in space. And yeah, they all have different theoretical underpinnings, but I want to talk today about the two major house systems in astrology, and that is whole sign house system versus Placidus house system. It is a very hotly contested issue in the astrology community, or at least in the tropical Western astrology community. How do you look at a chart? Do you look at it via whole sign house systems where the entire circle of 360 degrees is neatly split into 12 30-degree segments? Or do you look at it according to the Placidus house system, where the 360-degree day is split up unevenly, and you can have a house that has less than or more than 30 degrees. Sometimes even in Placidus house system, the rising sign could be in the 12th house instead of the first. Just so you know what side of the divide I come down on, I am a staunch user of the whole sign house system. I like it because of its legibility. It's so easy to read and interpret. And a lot of the work that I do in terms of working with astrology clients, I'm combining education with interpreting their various astrology charts, and so it's really important for me to have a chart that is clearly legible, just because there are so many astrological concepts to talk about in a particular reading that I want the house system to be the least of our worries. For further context, I am an astrologer who combines both modern and traditional astrology techniques. I have no allegiance to any particular school of thought. I do have my own theoretical underpinnings, which are like based on understanding the world in a way that is similar to the way that my ancestors may have understood the world. And so sometimes that puts me very much in the traditional or Hellenistic astrology camp. But there are so many things that I like about like evolutionary and like mystical astrology too. So I take what I need and I leave what doesn't resonate. And what doesn't resonate for me is Placidus. Let's talk about how these systems came to be. So this is me giving a very simplified retelling of like the difference between whole sign and Placidus. Feel free to do your own research or ask questions in the comments. I'm definitely open to discussion about this. I don't think it's that big a deal, but like I said, it's very hotly contested in the astrology community. So yeah. So this is how I imagine the whole sign house system gets developed. This is me sort of simplifying and storytelling at the same time. All right. So astrology, making sense of the sky from our perspective here on Earth. From our perspective here on Earth, we may have noticed in the past that, oh, the sun seems to make this elliptical shape in the sky, and it takes about 24 hours for that cycle to complete itself. Okay, duly noted. 24 hours makes up a day. Got it. Also, by observational pattern, we've noticed that there are 12 major constellations that are viewable to us from our perspective on the Earth. So combining these two observations, we could say that perhaps it takes the sun 24 hours to make its cycle, and perhaps it is spending 2 hours in each of these 12 signs, 12 rising signs. Literally, what sign was on the eastern horizon at the moment of your birth? And we know that that is broken down into 2-hour increments over a 24-hour period. Basically, just in the ancient world, this idea of like creating a system based on dividing up the sky, the space of the sky, in equal increments and trying to create a system, a pattern, you know? So basically, what I'm trying to describe is that whole sign house system is about looking at the sky, dividing it up into equal increments, and then understanding the world through that lens. Whole sign house system would make a note of the birth time of any given person and be like, okay, when I looked out on the horizon at that moment, the sun in its elliptical, and when I divided the sky, it was sitting in Sagittarius. We're gonna go with that as the rising sign. We're gonna say that every 2 hours after that, the sun changed signs, so then the second house for this person must be in Capricorn. The third house for this person must be in Aquarius, you know? Just really neat, really tidy. But rarely in nature are things so neat, so concrete, such clear divisions being made. And so Placidus' system comes along and says, yeah, that works, but also I think we could get a little bit more exact. Placidus system starts with the same idea, but then Placidus system does not take for granted that the sky can be evenly divided up into 2-hour segments. Instead, it looks at time. So this is the difference between whole sign dividing to the sky as if it's just space and can just neatly be divided like a pie, and Placidus, which is looking at how time is actually working. So Placidus is the idea of an astrologer noting your birth time, going outside, and yes, noting the sign that's on the eastern horizon at the moment that you're born, but then staying outside and taking very clear notes, detailed notes. Okay, so the sun was in Sagittarius for 30 more minutes after you were born, and then it changed signs, and then it was in Capricorn for approximately 1 hour 27 seconds, and then it moved into Aquarius for 3 hours, and you know, that kind of thing. So when you look at a natal chart in the Placidus sign system, very rarely will you see evenly divided little sections of the pie. They are very much detailed and specific to the things that were happening on that day. You could conceivably have a first house that is made up of 5 degrees, and then a second house that is made up of 45 degrees of the chart, you know? So that's like the basic underpinnings of how each of those house systems sort of came to be. Issue comes up when we think about perspective. So you know how at the poles where there are times of the year where the sun never sets or the sun never rises, and you'll end up with like 16 hours of daylight or 24 hours of night. Hey y'all. This is me from the editing perspective. It looks like my audio was corrupted, so this is me re-recording some of that. What I was saying is, imagine you are a child born at the poles, and your astrologer's perspective is skewed because of that extreme in location. So your astrologer goes outside at the moment of your birth to see what sign is on the horizon, and it's Cancer. And then they sit there for the next 6 hours, and it never seems to change from Cancer. So then they note in their notebook that for 6 hours, 1/4 of the day, it was in Cancer. So then 1/4 of your chart is taken up by a house that is in Cancer. Literally, how many degrees? That's 90 degrees. In the whole signs house system, that would be 3 different houses. So can you imagine what that experience looks like on a chart? And then how do you interpret such a chart? So interesting to note that in this example, if 1/4 of the chart were Cancer, that means that the opposite sign of Capricorn would also have to take up another 1/4 of the chart. So that's 2 signs taking up 180 degrees of a 360-degree circle. What then do those other houses look like? You know, you've got 10 houses that are supposed to divide up the rest of this circle, but only 180 degrees to do it in. You know, do you get then 18-degree houses or a whole bunch of 9-degree houses? How is that circle divided up? And then what does that mean for interpreting a Placidus chart at those extremes of location on Earth, and therefore those extremes of perspective? And so you can look at 3 Placidus charts, one from like the North Pole, the equator, and the South Pole, born at the exact same time, at the exact same longitude, and of course on the exact same day, and get 3 radically different charts. Whereas in whole sign, they may be different, but the differences are going to be very, very subtle, depending on the time of the year. I want to show you an example, so I'm gonna break out my computer and show you my little visual aid. So these are examples of whole sign charts at each of the 3 extremes. This one is at basically the North Pole, this one's at the equator, this one is at the South Pole. And we know that they are the same time and date of birth because we can see the sun signs. We can see this one is at 10 degrees of Capricorn and 10 minutes. This one is at 10 degrees of Capricorn and 10 minutes. And here, 10 degrees and 10 minutes. So yeah, these are the same time, same date, just different places in the world, whole sign. We can see that all, well, not all 3, but that the North Pole and the equator are both Libra risings. The South Pole is Scorpio rising, so a difference in perspective there. But we can see that each of the houses is equally divided in all of these charts. There's no one house that's particularly large or particularly small. Yeah, pretty similar results across locations. That's what I'm trying to show. Now let me show you what it would look like in Placidus. Same exact time and date, but if we looked at Placidus charts. Again, this is the exact same date and time at the North Pole, at the equator, and at the South Pole. We know that it's the exact date and time because it is 10 degrees, well, this one's 9 minutes. 10 degrees, 9 minutes, 10 degrees, 9 minutes, the sun, and 10 degrees, 9 minutes. So all of these are the exact same time. And in terms of the same division, we've got, yes, 2 Libra rising charts, and then the last one being Scorpio, so that's the same as whole sign. But look at the houses. Look here. Look how small that first house is. The others are pretty similar in width, but yeah, the 6th, 7th, 1st, and 12th are a little small. And so then that means that like the 9th and 3rd are really large. And then the 4th and 10th are large-ish. You know, not too extreme. But yeah, let's keep going. The one at the equator, the houses are pretty even. No interceptions, meaning like no houses are getting swallowed up and hidden in the signs. You know, pretty even. Not a whole lot of difference from the whole sign house. I mean, there's a little difference in terms of legibility. Like if I were to say, okay, where does the Libra first house start? It's here in the middle instead of squarely here. But you know, that's just a difference in how the charts are read. That's fine. But the real difference is when we get to the South Pole. Remember the Earth's axis tilting, and that means that one of the poles or the other is going to have a widely different perspective on things, you know? Remember that example that I gave where like, oh, it's in Cancer for like 1/4 of the day. That's basically what's happening here in this chart. Look, for example, at the 12th and the 6th houses. That spans the zodiac signs between Leo, Virgo, Libra, and some of Scorpio. So if I were to ask this person what sign is on your 12th house, they would say Leo. And then if I were asked to ask this person, oh, okay, well then what's the sign on your first house? Scorpio. So where are Virgo and Libra represented in terms of your houses? We can see that the planetary placements are there, but in terms of just strictly talking about houses, these signs get swallowed up. And yeah, so then if those, the 12th and 6th houses are so big, that means that some other houses end up being really, really small. So for example, let's look at the 2nd and 3rd house being teeny eensy, and then the 8th and 9th, and then the 8th and 9th houses being teeny eensy. Can I zoom in? Yeah. So then, yeah, if we were to ask this person what your first house is, oh, Scorpio. What's your second house? Sagittarius. What's your third house? Sagittarius. Right? And then the same over here. Oh, what sign is on the cusp of your 8th house? Oh, Gemini. Oh, okay. Well, what sign is on the house on the cusp of your 9th house? Oh, Gemini. So the duplications, that's what a duplication is, and the interceptions. How, like, if I were to ask you what sign your 12th house was in, you would say Leo, and that would basically hide the Virgo and Libra-ness of it all. And then, yeah, the duplications. So yeah, that's kind of the issue with Placidus, is that in the extremes you get these duplicated houses or intercepted houses that are hiding information, and it's just not as clear and legible as whole sign. That's how different charts can look depending on the house system you use. Like I said, I am very much in favor of using whole sign house system, and so of course this video sort of has a slant in that direction. You know, it also might be useful to look at your favorite astrologers, the ones that you resonate with, and see what sign system they are using to interpret charts. Because there are more than a dozen different house sign systems and ways to interpret any given chart. So it might, you know, benefit you to just look at your chart through the lens of all of these different house systems. Maybe one resonates with you more than the other. I guess what I'm saying is don't take my word for it. Do your own experimentation. At any rate, that is the video. That is what I have to share. Thank you and shout out again to KetchupKnife for asking the question in the comments. I love it when folks ask questions because it gives me ideas for videos to make. So yeah, if you have any questions, concerns, ideas, drop them in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and thank you for making time for queer astrology. Mwah, mwah.